Hello and welcome to My Emotional Armor, the podcast where we discuss the effects of covert narcissistic parenting. I am your host, Cindy Koo, a survivor and robot warrior here to share the ways emotional armor can help you heal, stay safe, and regain your sense of self. Hey guys, I hope you're all enjoying the regularly scheduled, consistent content. I am pleased to say I have some episodes locked and loaded, so the wait will not be as long next time. Now, the last two episodes were a little on the theoretical side, so today I want to bring us back to real life. I think we can all agree there's a lot of bad news going on in the world right now. We're in the midst of a global pandemic, and if you're from the US, there's a lot of racial and social upheaval also occurring. In addition to seeing everything on the news and in your social media feeds, you're probably hearing a lot about the tragedies and injustices from your covert narcissist. In fact, I am willing to bet your CNP is the regular bearer of bad news in your life. It's almost as if they have a radar for this stuff and get a thrill off sharing it. If you've ever had the feeling of not wanting to look at your phone when your CNP texts or calls because you think, oh gosh, what horrible thing happened now, keep listening. Now, we all have bad days and bad news that we need and want to discuss. But it's the frequency and almost strange satisfaction the CNP gets from sharing that makes your defenses ignite when you get that text or phone call from them. There's actually a German psychological term for this called Schadenfreude. It literally means to experience pleasure, joy, or self-satisfaction upon learning of or witnessing the troubles, failures, or humiliation of another. There's also a psychologist named Abdul Saad who does an amazing job of explaining this in terms of covert narcissism. And I'll link to his video segment on it in the show notes. It's a pretty academic explanation, but one I think is definitely worth listening to, as well as many of the other videos on his Vital Minds page. So there are a couple reasons related to the covert narcissist's psychological makeup that causes this Schadenfreude. The first is their deep sense of shame and incredibly low self-esteem. The second is that they cannot emotionally self-regulate. This means that they regard themselves only by what is going on around them. So let's further unpack that a bit, looking specifically at the covert narcissist in comparison to your more traditional grandiose narcissist. A grandiose narcissist is known for being incredibly charming and gregarious. They talk ad nauseum about their accomplishments, possessions, who they know, and what they have. By contrast, the covert narcissist, also called the shy narcissist, doesn't act in this way because they are painfully aware of their own shortcomings. They aren't deluded in the same way a grandiose one is. Because of this deep insecurity, they're simply not able to come off as charismatic the way a grandiose narcissist can. When you feel so painfully downtrodden about yourself, it's really hard to do anything in your life. And so many coverts really don't do or achieve the things that they want. They are immobilized by their own shame, which makes them feel even worse about themselves. The way they explain this cycle, though, is through the what could have been narrative, which I'm sure I'll dedicate an entire episode on in the future. But in short, the mantra is, if only this, then I could have been this. It's always something or someone else's fault. This is why covert narcissists are also called the victim narcissist. So how does this relate to their constant stream of bad news? For the covert, misfortune plays a specific role in their psychology. It's how they make sense of how poorly they're doing, of how disappointed in themselves they are. Remember, they already feel a low sense of self-worth, which prevents them from doing or accomplishing anything worthy in their eyes. But because their shame runs so deep, admitting that this cycle is self-inflicted is just simply too painful to bear. So they need to explain it by comparing their situation with someone else's. That's why you get this sneaky sense that they love wallowing in other people's misery. It gives them a chance to do a couple of things. Number one, it allows them to take a look at their own lives and consider themselves doing, quote, better in comparison. Let me explain what I mean by that. Let's say your CNP calls with an update on a relative's health condition. They may let you know that so-and-so person forgot to take their medication, which caused a whole host of other issues. But the CNP will follow it up with, that's why I always label everything and I make sure my mom's medication is on a schedule. But they're not like that. They don't follow a routine like I do. It's that follow-up statement, the like I do. It's the separation of me, the person who does it right, versus them, the ones who do it wrong. And that's the key here. There's absolutely nothing wrong with sharing about an ailment. These things happen and are part of life. It's when the CNP uses it as a springboard to bolster their own self-image by highlighting someone else's mistake. That's the more insidious behavior. The second reason CNPs revel in bad news is that it allows them an opportunity to extol their values. You'll see a lot of this in cult leaders who always have a hearty helping of narcissism. A great example of a covert narcissist cult leader specifically is in the documentary Holy Hell, which is on Netflix now if you're interested. So, let's look at a recent example I can give you from my personal life. My CNP was talking about coronavirus and how people should stop chastising President Trump for calling it the Chinese virus. That people are way too sensitive and more attention should be paid on finding a cure than giving it a different name. After all, it did originate in China. My CNP went on to talk about his constitutional rights, freedom of speech, how he's a good American citizen, and how political correctness is just overall a stupid, wasted effort. Now, if I try to counter that by saying, well, Asian people have been violently attacked because others believe this is a Chinese virus, by President Trump calling it that, this sentiment is reinforced and blame is placed wrongfully on Asian people. The CNP will respond with, well, those people are just plain evil. Now, this is a favorite argument of a CNP. When backed into a corner, they will otherize the wrongdoers and put them in a box in the corner. The CNP will then go on to talk at length about their own righteousness and how different he or she is from these evil people. They may serve you a word salad and go on about their belief system so that you don't even remember what you were talking about in the first place. This is all because you've made a valid point and you're ruining their moment to make themselves look good. The CNP brought up this topic with you in hopes of imparting some wisdom onto you. But jigs up, you countered it. And as I said at the start of this episode, because they have so much shame, they cannot stand to be wrong. So instead of acknowledging that, you have a point, you could be right, they will go off on a tangent about their own virtues and values. And what's even more futile is they won't even get true satisfaction from, quote, owning you. They may feel like it's a win in the moment because they've successfully confused you or probably just exhausted you. But deep down, they know that all they did was distract you. They ran away from a challenge by talking themselves out of it. This cowardly inauthenticity only adds to their mounting insecurity. Can you imagine what this feels like for them over decades of doing this same thing, conversation after conversation? All right, we've already talked a good amount about the covert narcissist in this episode. You have hopefully a greater understanding of what's going on with all their bad news. What are you supposed to do? How do you handle it? Essentially, you disengage and you take the high road every single time. And I have a few tips on how to do just that. Number 1, when the covert narcissist reaches out with bad news about someone else, offer condolences and sympathy, but nothing more. This looks like saying or texting, I'm so sorry for their loss, gosh, how tragic, that sounds awful, my heart goes out to them, things like that. Make sure that you don't ask any further questions. This will invite a discussion that you already know you don't want to have. A trap many of us can fall into is that we feel bad for not providing a more genuine response. You may beat yourself up for being too cold in the face of another's tragedy. Remind yourself, though, that your response is not towards the affected person, but rather is to protect yourself from the CNP's manipulative behavior. Second thing, if your CNP has bad news about themselves that they want to share, decide how much participation you want to have in the interaction before it happens, ideally. Everyone has bad days and everyone needs to vent, including covert narcissists. They are human. They may have a legitimate complaint that you want to hear them out on, or they may just want to re-victimize themselves by telling you a story that you've heard 1,000 times. Listen to their words and make the decision for yourself. Resist the urge to lump everything they say into the useless complaining category. Practice listening and discernment here, not reacting out of impulse and fear. For example, my CNP was complaining about a hotel he was staying at. I decided in that moment that I was willing to hear him out and find another hotel for him given the circumstances. Now, this differs from when my CNP complains about the eating habits of my relatives. He will run through this laundry list of who eats what and how it's made his life so difficult. When this happens, I let him run his mouth and then I change the subject. First of all, there is nothing I can do about what other people eat. And secondly, this is a repeat complaint that I've heard no less than, about 50 times now, verbatim. By contrast, with the hotel situation, there was an actionable way for me to help. So third and final tip for bad news and CNPs. Don't share your bad news with them. Just don't do it. Keep your personal life personal. In the past, you may have shared your misfortune with the CNP and left the conversation feeling exhausted, tired, victimized, and you're not sure why. After all, they seem to be on your side, right? This is because their intentions to help you are sadly not always pure. They may try to take over and become your only support system as a way to show how virtuous and self-sacrificing they are. Or they may use it as leverage to put you down. For example, let's say you're not sure whether the career you're in is right for you. Instead of asking you questions to find out more about your passions or reasons for pivoting professions, they'll use it as a way to label you as indecisive, unstable, and immature. They will most likely always use it as a way to talk about perhaps the success they've had in their own career. Save these deep questions for people who actually know how to talk to you. Start paying attention to how you feel during and after conversations with certain people. If you feel energized, inspired, comforted, and at ease, then this is a person you can look to for support. Unfortunately for you, this is most often not the case with your CNP, and so in this way, they are undeserving of those authentic parts of you. I'm sure you feel like you should be closer with your parent, but the fact is you're not able to do that and stay emotionally safe. We think we're supposed to have these ultra vulnerable relationships with our parents, and if that is you, that is honestly fantastic. But there are a great many of us who have been proven time and time again that our parent is just not able to handle our ups and downs with care. So because of this, keep your bad news private from them. Okay, so what if you've already shared the bad news or you want to give an update on your life? That's totally fine. Say your piece and then end it with, "But I'm doing fine now." Or, "It's all good now, thanks." Use your discretion. If you've been diagnosed with a serious illness or you're getting divorced and you think your parent should know, by all means, inform them of the pertinent information. The point I'm trying to make here is don't look to them for support. If you happen to get it genuinely from them, that's wonderful, but make sure you're getting it from somewhere else too. So I hope these tips help you. I figured this was a relevant topic since there's a lot to be upset about right now, and it can be hard to navigate that with a CNP. You want to respond with compassion, but you don't want to be sucked into their egotistical game. I know I've personally been hit with videos, news articles, and statistics weekly about the decrepit state of the world from my CNP. Through gaining a better understanding of their psyche, you can start to depersonalize their behavior. It's really about them and their self-esteem, not you or your, quote, lack of empathy. And it's certainly not them trying to necessarily bring down your day specifically. A lot of times, we as CNP survivors feel like we lack warmth because we're not responding to our CNPs with more compassion towards tragedy. But really, the reason why is because we are protecting ourselves from a diatribe and another opportunity to make the CNP look pious and self-sacrificial. We can feel deep down that the intent is insincere. So please don't blame yourself and try not to take it personally. Try the tips I outlined earlier for warding off a CNP's bad news. And above all, trust that voice inside of you that knows you're a caring person. The voice inside of you that knows when something is off. Thank you again for tuning into this episode of My Emotional Armor. If you liked what you heard, please subscribe and leave a review. And if you have any topics you'd like to hear about on the show, please fill out the contact form online at myemotionalarmor.com. I'll see you guys next time, and as always, stay safe and armored up.